Hi everybody and welcome back to the Crafty Yellow Stamper. Hope you're all getting on okay with the lockdown situation that we've got going on at the moment. So I just thought I would hop on and share a quick card. I've done most of the stamping and die cutting first in order to make this a quick video, but just to give you an idea of a different type of card to make. So firstly, I must apologise about my terrible nails. Unfortunately, my daughter usually does my nails and she is obviously on lockdown with my gorgeous new granddaughter, who I'm missing loads, but hopefully things won't be too much longer. If not, I might have to go and kidnap the nail box from her house. Okay, so let's get going. So first of all, I have cut a piece of old olive cardstock. This is a standard half of an English A4, so half of whatever size of a sheet of cardstock we're using. I've scored it in half, and then I've scored the top half in half again in order to make an easel guard. So we're going to be using the Positive Thoughts stamp set today, and I just wanted to show you some of the nice little elements that came in the dies. So for the inside of our card, we're going to use this panel that I've die cut, and I don't know if you can see that really lovely edge round there, bit of a difference from the stitched edges. We're going to be using a piece of cardstock, just normal piece of Whisper White that I've embossed with the Layered Leaves embossing folder, just a piece that I cut off another project that I was making. And then I have stamped the leaves from the Positive Thoughts twice in Old Olive and die cut those. We've got some of the flowers stamped in Pretty Peacock and then die cut. I've got 3 of those because I wasn't really sure where I was going to put them. And then 2 of the, oh sorry, jog the camera, 2 of the little feathers here that I've die cut. And then this really nice strip die that comes in with it. And it's just this simple little metal die here. And it actually cuts out this really nice sort of patterned border, which we're going to use down the edge of our card today. Okay, so let's get going with layering it up. So first of all, I'm going to stick the the rectangle, it's not a square, is it? Excuse me, a rectangle, onto the inside of the card, so we've got somewhere to write. So I'm just going to add some of our snail adhesive onto that, and then we're going to put that centrally. Hoping that you can see, I've got the sun coming through the window, so there's a little bit of shade, so I'll apologise for that. We're going to stick that centrally into the inside of the card. And then what we're going to do is decorate the front. So we're going to use the piece that I embossed. Now, I tend to find that rather than sticking embossed pieces down with snail, it tends to be better to stick them with a little bit of our multi-purpose Tombow, because it sinks in to the raised parts that have been embossed or debossed, or however you like to think of it. Another tip, always open up your card when you're putting a piece onto the front of your card. Okay, so we're going to layer that strip just onto the top half of the easel card, so that when it sits up, we're looking at that piece, and you can see this is real-time videoing. I've got some glue on there, so I'm just going to wipe the worst of that off. Don't put too much on or it squidges out. And then when that's dry, I'll get my glue rubber on there, and that will get the rest of that off. Unfortunately, we don't sell the glue rubbers anymore, but they are still available on the internet. And if you haven't already got one, I would thoroughly recommend them. They just look like, oh, I'll just reach up and get it so you can see this little piece of plastic rubbery thing. It's quite bendy, flexible, and you can see that mine's covered in glitter because it's years old, and they really do last for absolutely years. You just use the edge or the corners and then sort of roll off the glue. So shame we don't sell those anymore, and hopefully maybe I should put an idea in the sandbox on Stampin' Up to suggest that they bring those back out again. Somebody might listen. Okay, so with these 2 little border strips that we've cut, you can see they're quite fiddly, so there's not a lot of room on the back of them for glue, but we're going to try and not get too much on. Now, ordinarily I would use a fine tip glue pen for this, but they are still awaiting customs approval. And so I haven't currently got one. Hopefully we might get some customs approval soon, you never know. Oh, sorry, I knocked you over. Sorry if that's made you feel a little bit seasick. So we are going to stick these strips down the side on our card, each side of the panel that we've put in, just to give it a little bit of decoration. And again, if you do get a little bit of glue squidge out, which is really easily done, you can always go over it with the glue rubber afterwards. I know a lot of people put their glue on a silicone mat, or they put it on their hand or whatever to do these fiddly bits, but I get enough glue everywhere as it is without covering my hand or my workspace in glue. Okay, so we've got those in there, and we're just going to leave those in there for the minute, and we're going to work on this little front bit for the time being. So we've got a variety of different things that we can use to decorate the front. Oh, I seem to have got that strip curled up, which has then pulled it out of line. So let's put that back down. You see, even Stampin' Up demonstrators have things go wrong. Okay, there we are, we're back down. Okay, just a little tip while we're talking about this filigree edge. Just a little tip, if you constantly run it through your big shot lengthways, so that way, I've got my camera at a different angle to you, how you're watching this. If you run it through that way all the time, you will find that it will bend and it will become banana shaped. So Stampin' Up suggest that you don't do that. I've found that if you run it through once that way and then turn it and run it through that way, it will flatten it out. If you don't get such a good die cut running it through that way, each time after you've run it through that way, just put it on your big shot and run it back through just to flatten it out. And you can see mine is fairly flat still, even though I've done quite a lot of cutting with that die. I found the hard way that if you let them bend too far, then you don't actually stand a chance of getting it back into the shape it should be. Okay, so now I was going to put some ribbon on the front here. This is the ribbon, the twill, old olive twill ribbon that comes in with the Botanical Prints card medley. It's really lovely, just nice simple ribbon, and I was going to put a piece across there, but I stuck it down, and then you don't get a neat finish if you have the edges. So we might make a bow with that in a bit. So right, so let's get this rest of this card put together. So with an easel card, it has to stand up like that, so it gets posted flat and then it needs to stand up. So we need something in the middle of this piece here to make it stand up. Well, I say in the middle, you don't always need it in the middle. All it needs to do is to catch the front to keep it standing up. So the best way to do that is to use whatever you're going to use on dimensionals. So I think what we're going to do a little bit of stamping here. Now I've used Pretty Peacock, as you can see, and I've used Mossy Meadow. We've got some white, and I just feel like we need to add a little bit of another colour in there. So what I thought we would do is add in some soft sea foam, just for a very light piece of some patterning. Now I wouldn't normally do this after I'd stuck this in, because if I stamp and mess it up, then that's my card ruined because it's already stuck in. But just for the sake of this video, so make sure if you're stamping with a small stamp like this feather, you can see that better that way, if you press too hard you will catch the edge, and then you'll have a line around your stamped image, which we don't really want. So I've just stamped, I don't know if you can see properly, just stamped those two little feathers on there. And then what we're going to do, we're going to layer up one of our flowers. So it doesn't really matter what size dimensionals you use for this, because we just want it to stand up. But I happen to have to hand the mini dimensionals. Hopefully that will do the trick. So let's just flick the backs off those. Okay, and what we're actually going to do, we're going to stand that off the side of our panel so that when we fold our card up, it should, she says, sit behind there like that. So then we're going to work on the front, and we want some height so that when this is folded up for your recipient, they've got something sticking out the top, but we need to make sure not to go past this line here, otherwise it won't fit in our envelope. So I've got a couple of the leaves out of the Positive Thoughts that I've stamped and die cut, and I think what we're going to do is layer those up like that, and then layer up one of the flowers on top. Now, I'm a bit OCD about things being balanced, and because we've got our flower down there, I think what we're going to do is put our other decorations to the left of the card. So I'm just going to put some dimensionals. You can see I never waste card, and this one had an image stamped on the back that didn't come out properly, so we flipped it over and used it for something else. So you also need to remember not to stick dimensionals on the back of your image above this line, because otherwise the card won't fold. Okay, so we're just going to put some dimensionals onto the bottoms of our two flowers, and again, this is where these little ones come in really handy. Saves you having to cut your dimensionals down, which you can do obviously, but these are very handy. Okay, so we're just going to pop a few on there. So we're going to bring this card front back in, and with it folded down so we make sure that we don't go over the top, we are going to put our decorations on. Now, you don't know if you can see because of the sun, but one of these actually came out stamped better. This one didn't come out quite so well there, and I could have discarded it or tried to stamp over it, and if it was in my Stamparatus I definitely would have done. But for the purposes of this, we are going to put this one, because we're overlapping them, we're going to put this one underneath, and then that piece won't show. So, okay, so we're going to go onto this corner here, remembering what I said about not going over the top of the card, and then, so that's the one that the stamping didn't come out quite so well on. So we're going to flick the backs off these. They always get stuck on your fingernails, don't they? Whenever I've been making cards, I find dimensional back ends everywhere. Okay, so again, we need to make sure not to go over the side of the card or it won't fit in our envelope. So we're going to go that way with that one. And then we're just going to layer up some, move that block out of your way so you can see. Then we're just going to layer up some of these mini dimensionals onto the back of one of these flowers. And we've got one that's actually flat. So I think what we're going to do is make this multi-layered by sticking that one onto the leaves that are actually raised up, and then raising the second one up. It's nice to have a little bit of dimension in our projects, so they're not just flat. So I'm just adding a little bit of Tombow onto that flower, and then we're going to use the height that we've already got from these leaves to add that one onto the leaves. And then the one that we've added the dimensionals on, I'm just going to flick the backs off. These little dimensionals aren't too bad to get the backs off, particularly if you've got a thumbnail, but just a little tip for you, if you do struggle getting the backs off, the easiest way is to turn it over and push your thumbnail, oh sorry, we're out of shot, push your thumbnail into the middle of the dimensional, and that will actually lift the edges. Okay, so we're going to go a little bit further across and up with that one, and that's actually stuck to the leaves, so we still get our fold. And then I really like these little feathers, they're just really cute. Didn't really have a place in mind for them to go, but I feel like we just need a little something to echo our feathers that we've stamped inside the card. So what we're going to do is just turn those over. Now, when you're layering up things, they should really be in odd numbers, just to keep the balance of the card. We're just going to put a couple of dimensionals on the back of each of these feathers, and I'm about to break the odd rule possibly. So we currently have two sets of leaves, two flowers, so we need a third of something. So we're going to go with one of these feathers, and we are just going to tuck it in behind that flower, just making sure that those dimensionals have contact with the leaf and not the card, otherwise it won't stand up. And then I think what we're going to do, rather than put 2 more on the front, 2 again, otherwise I'll be in trouble with everybody that's shouting at the camera. No, we always do things in odd numbers. And we're going to tuck this little feather, I think, underneath here, so he's coming out here. So we've still got room to write a sentiment, stamp a sentiment, or write a greeting on the inside of the card, and the flower will hold up the front of the card for us. So there we go, just a really quick and simple card, a little bit more effective because it's an easel, and hopefully the recipient of this, which is one of my lovely friends for her birthday, will be very pleased to receive it. Okay, that's all from me from now, and I'll pop back later with some more cards. See you soon, and happy stamping.